Dr. Dani Antonellos, what it's like to work with the best physios in the world. Dr. Dani is an osteopath, personal trainer, and competitive bodybuilder from Australia, blending clinical expertise with functional fitness. Her journey and purpose reflects a commitment to breaking stereotypes and helping others achieve their health, fitness, and rehab goals with confidence. Foundational fitness. Before chasing advanced techniques, Dani stresses the need to master the basics. This foundational approach ensures long-term success in injury prevention. Injury prevention for athletes. Learn about Dani's assessment processes for clients, focusing on movement patterns to create balanced training programs that minimize injury risks. Empathy in training. Dani's personal injury experiences have shaped her empathetic approach to client care, emphasizing the mental and emotional aspects of rehabilitation. Bodybuilding challenges. Insights into the physical, mental, and social pressures of competitive bodybuilding for females. Women's health. Dani discusses her experience with hormonal contraceptives and the importance of informed choices. Working with the best. Dani also speaks about working with Andrew Locke of United Health Education and the amazing work they are doing together. Dani's fresh perspective and relatable experiences make this episode a must-watch for anyone passionate about fitness and holistic health. Whether you're an athlete, injured, or a beginner, her insights will inspire and guide you on your journey. Spoiler alert, during this show, I made a commitment to book with Dani personally for my injury rehab. I did, and 2 weeks later I had an appointment with her, and it was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Dani. So follow Dani on Instagram for more tips and let us know what topics you'd love to hear in the future episodes. You can find Dani at the show notes below, padoperformance.com.au. Her app, check out the show links. I can't say that one. And on Insta, this one's pretty easy, Dani Antonellos. And on Instagram, unitedhealthed.com. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert from HowNotToDieGuy.com. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, sponsored by State, the ultimate daily formula for optimum hormone health, stress management, energy, and performance. 100% natural and clinically proven ingredients. Provides everything you need to raise your game in a convenient, gut-friendly capsule. And my new sponsor, Michael Mason of the Mason Survival Protocol. Links for my former shows are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest in Australia this time, Dani Antonellos.
Thank you, Damien. So excited to be chatting to you. Lovely to meet you as well.
Thank you so much. Great to chat to you just before offline. And we said you're the third sort of bodybuilder slash professional in your field, you know, osteopath and in the clinical field, and you're the second female clinical bodybuilder I've had on. We had Astrid Naranjo, the anti-dietitian, on last week. She'll be airing soon, and she's a dietitian who actually went on stage and got a pro card. So I'm excited to find out all about you. But first off, osteopath. That's your real background that you started with?
Yeah, that's right. Well, first I was a PT,
Right.
and then I completed my Cert 3 and 4 in fitness to become a PT while doing a health science degree at uni. So that was 3 years of a little bit of nutrition, a little bit of exercise science, biomechanics. It was kind of a lucky dip on all things health and science, but that's kind of my fault for picking such a broad degree with no real idea on what I actually wanted to do. I just knew I loved training in the gym. I loved playing tennis growing up. It got to maybe halfway through that first degree and I realized, hang on a minute, I'm going to be 3 years down the track and not really qualified for anything. So then that's when I decided to do my Cert 3 and 4. So that was my main career, training people. And then after the first 3 years of uni, I then jumped into the osteopathy degree, which was 5 years. I was kind of a bit more of a happy-go-lucky person back then, a little bit of trial and error.
Mm.
Sort of, yeah, I mean, I tried what I liked and just followed my gut instinct, really. So then I was able to study for a further 5 years while still training people. And then I think that's what led me to where I am now, or just at the start of my career after graduating. I had both of those experiences. So the hands-on work as an osteopath, so a lot of manual therapy, diagnosing the body as a whole, but it was, massaging, cracking, all the neck cracking that's popular on Instagram, all of that stuff. But then we didn't really learn how to train people. So I was a little bit of a standout in
Yeah.
that way, that I did have that experience. It just didn't sit well with me, though, that those two worlds were separate,
Yep.
because at the end of the day, we're here to teach people how to feel good, injury free, feel strong. But then personal trainers were good at training people, osteopaths were good at the hands-on manual therapy, but it just blew my mind that there was not more of a crossover. So that's what really started my passion and mission, to blend the two worlds together.
And that's what comes across so much. That's what stood out for me when I saw what you did with content and so on. You are passionate, which is great, and people love that. But really, what you said there, combining the two, is brilliant. So most osteopaths are clinical only. I thought really clever getting that prior 3 years of education, then 8 years of education overall. But Professor Nick Gill, strength and conditioning coach of the New Zealand All Blacks for the last 15 years, I think, he stated in one of the shows that most of their physiotherapy, sorry, he actually stated that 90% of his physiotherapy for the All Blacks is done in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really telling when you got the top performing athletic team in the world. And yeah, you'll get the clinical stuff, absolutely need that, but we need to get you back to function. And their function is elite sports. My function could be looking after my boy. My function is actually firefighting, so it's pretty high intensity, but it has to be conditioning of sorts. So really interesting. You've got both those fields together in yourself, and you put it out really well. Um, Osteopath, can I just ask for the listeners and the viewers, what does an osteopath do? Because it's a funny name, right?
Yeah, a lot of people, and we used to get this a lot when we would tell someone what an osteopath is, or our title. And then the follow-up question would always be, is that working with bones? Because
Right.
the word osteopath, bone pathology. And then we'd always have to say, no, we work with everything. So essentially, an osteopath does work holistically with the body. And one of the major rules of osteopathy is that everything works together. So what I did love about osteopathy was, if someone came in with a sore shoulder, a lot of professions just go straight for that shoulder. What's wrong there? But we were taught that is the last place you look. You look at the upper back, the neck, the elbow, things like that, all of the surrounding structures. We also were taught that if you put the body, so the body can self-heal in a sense. And we would use our hands-on therapies to help the body get more nutrients to that area, reducing inflammation, very positional work there.
Mm.
So yeah, it's just really about honoring the body's self-healing mechanisms in the right environment as well. We did a little bit of exercise based work, maybe a couple of modules within one of the 5 years,
Yeah.
but it was very much just about, yeah, learning all the different kinds of pathologies, some medications, not that we could prescribe medication, but just having a lot of that knowledge. So it was a very challenging degree. One of the years we had 13 exams, both written and practical. But yes, there was still a big part missing, which was the exercise. But no, I totally do still honor that degree. But just for anyone listening, and I always tell people, if you do want to be an osteopath, you're not really going to be doing any of the things that I show on Instagram. So I don't want to mislead people.
And how good is Instagram? And we talked about social media the other day. Dr. Dani Taylor, PhD, and I, we're talking about the pros and cons of social media. But I think social media can be used really well for showing what you do, showing how we can help people. We both help others for free. I think it's great to be able to go on and see those things.
Absolutely. And not only can you help educate people, but you just meet people. A lot of my friends from back in the day from the competing world and, but not many women were doing bodybuilding. And I'm sure we'll go down that tangent later. But I met some of my best friends from Instagram and we would just meet up at events and things like that. So there, if used correctly, there are so many benefits to online. And it's definitely the way the world is going. I can understand why some people might need a detox or time away from social media, but if you do have a business that does involve getting clients or showcasing a brand, whether it be online or physical, it's the way of the future and we don't really have a choice, to be honest.
It really is. And I learned that during the COVID time. I interviewed Tony Blauer. I
Yes.
titled that show "The Grandfather of Self-Defense." Um, he's
Amazing.
he teaches all the top people in America, FBI, HRT, all these combative sort of things. But the reason I mention that is he went from a staff of 60 and traveling the country with all these people to, right, you can't leave your house. What's he going to do? And he had to transition to
Mm.
online. He did that really successfully when you didn't think it could be done. Andrew Locke, who you work with at United Health Education, I watched his videos and I've been in this space for, gosh, I just did the maths, 38 years.
Oh, fantastic.
That's a long time in the health and fitness industry, and it
Yeah.
wasn't about health when it was starting. Um,
No.
no, not at all. So he's very educational. You're very educational, which is great. And just putting that good content out is brilliant. You mentioned there about the shoulder. I remember with Paul Check, who's one of the original sort of rehab guys with the Swiss balls and core training, and he talked about a baseball player who was always throwing his shoulder out. And you mentioned the shoulder's the last thing you look at. He diagnosed it down to his right big toe didn't work properly. And as soon as
Oh, wow.
he manipped his right big toe, then he didn't overthrow his shoulder, and the ball just flew.
That is incredible. Yeah, I probably need to learn a little bit more about that kind of it. But yeah, the body is connected. That's definitely a new one that I'm so curious to research after this. I need to know more about how that could have worked. But
It,
that's
it's a
cool though.
it's a great story and almost a wrap up of what you were saying. The whole thing's connected. We can't just do the clinical. We also got to do the conditioning, which is what I was paraphrasing with you, and
Mm.
that's what you're doing with your clients. So maybe let's step off there. What is it that you're doing with your clients? I had a look at your Instagram, which has got awesome links to what you're doing with United Health Education and the app and so on. So when someone wants to come see you, Danny, say Joe Public, maybe a little bit injured because we all get a bit injured later on, but we
Yeah.
want to be a weekend warrior of some kind. What are they sort of doing when they come and see you?
Yeah, so I do see clients face to face at our gym Paddle Performance in Sydney, or I do see majority online actually. But with face to face or online, it just comes down to an initial assessment. So asking what's wrong, what are the problems, what are the issues that you're facing. So a conversation first, whether it be face to face on Zoom or on the phone,
Hmm.
just finding out a history about that person because everyone is so unique and we all have our different reasons to why we end up in a predicament with either pain or dysfunction or we've plateaued in our training. So it's just about finding out verbally a little bit more about what's going on. Your classic questions of, is the pain local? When does it come on? Is it worse morning or night? Really getting a great description, finding out their occupation, of course, because we spend a lot of time at work and those positions or actions at work have a large impact on the body. Finding out whether they're training or not. You can have someone who's very untrained that gets injured or someone that overtrains and gets injured. So they're complete opposite spectrums, just finding out about that. And then we get into the actual assessment or physical assessment. We're finding out how they're moving. For example, someone comes in with shoulders. Okay, can you touch your hands
Yeah.
together over your head, reach around, things like that. And then we go from there. So if someone does come in with a sore shoulder, the first place I would look after the range of motion is that upper back. And it's one of the most common places that just gets stuck.
Yeah.
You and I are sitting in front of a computer screen now.
Yeah.
The body molds in that position. We've got desk workers. We hold the tools at work out in front of us. Everything is out in front. So the body the upper back becomes a little bit more immobile or stiff in that position. And then the shoulders have to do extra work to make up for the lack of mechanics in the upper back.
Yeah.
That's one example. So then we would go through the exercises there. So
And you're
with the
doing those
online,
exercises online as well. You said with Zoom, are you giving that, showing them those exercises? Are you using the app? How are you using that?
I use Zoom as well. So whether that's sort of is a replicate of what they would do in the gym.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm just not there as close. But when you do this for such a long time, you know the questions to ask, you know
Yep.
the movements to demonstrate and things like that. So it becomes a lot easier. For someone new to the industry, I wouldn't recommend online training straight away. You need to see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bodies and movement and just get used to that yourself before going online.
Yep.
But yeah, same sort of thing. And then with my actual online coaching, I prescribe the full exercise. So not just your rehab movements for a sore shoulder, for example, it's your leg day training, upper body training, the whole work. So a few different tiers have come out of it. And I really just formulated that based on what people have come to me needing. So when I didn't have any businesses, I kind of just put the feelers out there and came up with a way, okay, well, how can I help people by filling in all the gaps and not kind of just offering a one size fits all without
Brilliant.
deviating too much from my specialty, of course. But as we spoke earlier, COVID brought, everyone online, and that was a huge growth point for my online business because people finally saw the value in Zoom or online communication because we didn't have an option. So it was, a really tough time, obviously, but a huge turning point for online businesses.
Yeah, gosh, it really is. And you have to get in front of the camera and do the work, but it does pay off. I'm
Yes.
thinking bodybuilders. I'm assuming bodybuilders would come to you as well to be trained.
Absolutely. Yeah. Obviously I was one myself, and that was on my last show was 2019 now. So I don't know how long I can identify with that anymore. But I did 5 shows from 2016 to 2019. I've tapped into that mindset that it takes of almost, yeah, you're just obsessed with it because you love it so much. You've got your eyes on the prize, and the training is very hard.
Yeah.
So I know what it feels like for that person. And a lot of bodybuilding injuries comes from overuse and overworking. And some coaches might get feedback from a judge for their clients, and the feedback was you have to grow glutes. So then they would give them glute exercises nearly every day, but high volume and intensity. But then with that can come a lower back issue. And so it's really the art of changing the program that they already have and giving them some correct warm-ups and all of the quote unquote boring things that aren't as intense, but then doing it in a way that they trust you, and you have to educate them on how it's going to improve their results and muscle growth. It's a real art working with bodybuilders because they will do everything and more.
They will. And I use the word bodybuilder, but maybe we can go and use the word physique athlete because we're talking females and males. And gosh, now I'm older. I used the word back in my day.
Back
Back
in
in my
my
day,
day.
you had male and female bodybuilding and male and female fitness. No, there
Yeah.
wasn't even male fitness, it was female fitness. So it's just not as big a female muscular athlete. But must have males and females come to you. I'm thinking as you're saying it, you're doing a much more well-rounded approach. I mean, I got so many. I used to go to physio just so I could keep training when I was competing. So it must be really interesting training these people when they come along and then adding all these things in to keep their health span and competition span going for longer.
Yeah, and it also helps their ability to pose and hold poses on stage, which
Right.
not a lot of people know. But for example, if you have a stiff upper back and a sore shoulder or a little bit of imbalances in there, you're going to struggle with your rear lat spread. You won't be able to get your shoulder forward, for example, or certain
Yeah.
positions. Or for the females, when you're twisting your torso, if you have some dysfunction in the hip or lower back, that's going to impede the ability to get all the way around, and just really cool things like that. It's super niche to bodybuilding and physique athletes, but
Yeah.
you can even liken that to sporting athletes as well. Yeah, for their certain job, we get a lot of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, we get a lot of tennis players, any kind of sport, it's just about sport with the technique is very, very repetitive. And then the
Yes.
body becomes super dominant in those repetitive actions that we then need to spend time training the opposite positions and the muscles that don't really get worked as much. So it's again just about educating on why we have to train the other parts as well. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's just I love it. It's such an art form as well, but with working with the different personality types too, it really keeps you on your toes.
Absolutely. And this is not a new thing. I mean, we're in 2024. I'm talking to a great female skilled clinician and competitor on the other side of the country. But back when I was in Special Forces, I would see one of our top physios, and said the same thing. So I went along with all my gear, body armor, and things, and got in the position we are for shooting, and said, right, Damien, we've got to now train all the reverse of that to get you
Brilliant.
balanced, to make sure you stay injury free. And this, like I said, it's not a new thing, but yet I'd have to go and see that one guy who was the best that nobody really knew in all of my country.
Mm.
Now it's a little bit more accessible. You're saying this on the podcast, you're showing it in on the socials as well, and people are catching up.
Slowly. I mean, yeah, no, I appreciate it. And really cool that you got to work. What you've done across a lifespan is just unreal. I can't even wrap my head around all the cool things that you've done. But then the fact that you got to work with physios who, yeah, knew what they were doing, because it is still very specialized. It's hard. Oh, it's as hard as you make it, but Instagram doesn't really favor education that much because it's kind of a short form
Mm.
platform. So YouTube podcasts like what we're doing now is awesome, but it's still the battle of, okay, you have to entertain people and educate them, and video editing and filming. It's a whole nother skill set. It takes
Video editing, gosh.
yeah, so if you can't find someone to outsource that, which is hard in itself, finding that person, you're going to be spending hours doing that to get your message across, and you post it, and then we see what the algorithm does with it. But
Yeah.
I really take my hat off to people who don't go against their values. They want to teach people about a topic that they love, and that's important, and then you just have to keep going with that because yeah, it's a wild world out there on the internet.
I love that you talked about values, and I think you glossed over how important it is when bodybuilders come to you or physique athletes, and you're going to work on those deficiencies. So for listeners and viewers, I urge you to maybe go back and listen to that part that Danny said. But it's super important because the bodybuilder will come in with that tunnel vision mentality, or the physique athlete, or even the elite athlete. And when you're talking about a much more well-rounded approach, it's going to make them last longer. I had an example of, again, Dr. Dani Taylor just the other week. He was a world champion natural bodybuilder. And he had people come to him, females asked him to train them. And six of the females that came to train him were amenorrheic. And for the listeners and the
Man,
viewers, they'd lost their period, they lost their menstrual cycle. That's not healthy. That means they can't have a child. Their body's not capable of rearing a child, producing an egg even. And he said, sure, but I'm going to get you healthy first. Sure, we can get you to lose weight, but we're going to get you healthy first. And four of them cried. Four of them were going,
yeah.
thank you so much.
Mm.
And they knew the importance of being healthy and then doing all the nice looking stuff for the photos and so on, or for the stage or whatever he was training them for. We didn't go down that route. But I thought, that's sticking to your values. I'm not going to train you, I'm not going to take your money and just train you up and get in shape for the bikini, whatever it is. I'm going to get you healthy and in great shape. And you're the female version of that for this, Danny.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Yeah, that story because that's so nice to hear. It's again very rare. More people are becoming educated on how health and fitness are two different things. And sometimes you can kind of like, I can't talk because essentially when I was competing, I didn't have a period back in
Wow.
2019, but I didn't really understand why, and it wasn't necessarily a bad thing back then. You kind of just saw it as a part of what you were doing. And
Yeah,
I had a,
for a very short pun on words, but period, but not for 6 months to a year.
I lost mine for about 18 months.
Wow. And well,
Yeah.
let's jump off because the listeners would want to know, how did you get that back? How'd you
Okay,
fix it?
so The reason that I did lose it in the first place is because when you are doing a comp prep, it's a lot of stress on the body. You can have a calm mindset. And I love competing just for the mindset gains, I call them, because you really just learn how to be present. You tap into a version of yourself that is unstoppable. Because
Mm,
at the end of the day, you're going to be up there in not many clothes, in front of a lot of people, and you're on display. So if you can get through that, you can get through so many things in life. So, and you make friends, there are lots of positives, but the negatives, you're putting your body in a severe calorie deficit. So you're eating a lot less than what your body requires. You're training a lot,
mm,
sometimes double sessions, lots of cardio, lots of weight training. And that is all stress on the body. So if your body is just trying to survive, the last thing as a female that is a priority is reproduction. So the body saves energy by not going through the menstrual cycle every month. The hormones don't peak and trough. So yeah, it's an energy conservation mode that you go in.
hmm
And I was okay with it back then. I was young and naive and still thought the doctors were still telling me that you need to stay on the pill for these reasons. It's just
Oh no.
easier. All of that, which now fast forward, we know there are so many other options.
Yep.
But my savior, aside from having a break from bodybuilding, again, due to good old COVID, just stopped us all in our tracks, was seeking out a naturopath. And I still work with her now. And every day I have my herbal medicine. I have some supplements, nothing completely over the top, a little bit of fish oil, magnesium, and a couple of others which are specific to me. So
hmm
don't go and copy what I'm doing to anyone listening, but just seeking out a natural specialist. And after a few months of working with her, the cycle came back, my hormones felt normal, and I felt like a human again, because
Great.
competing is very masculine, dominant energy. But as a female, you do need, and male as well, but female more so, obviously, you need that female energy. And working with the naturopath really did help that.
Brilliant. Wow. Thank you for elaborating on that. Um, I've got a question. That you caught my attention a few minutes ago. What was harder for you? Was it the training or the dieting?
Good question. It was the dieting
Yeah.
because particularly being half Greek,
Yeah.
going to my
Food.
grandma's house, my dad was a bodybuilder, right?
Oh,
And obviously,
wow.
I think that did plant a seed. He was, yeah, doing his IFBB back in the 80s, 90s as well. But I think visiting her, saying no to her beautiful cooked food, or I was in my 20s, I'd have birthday parties and going out and,
Yeah.
events that I just said no to, going on dates. It just took a lot more brain power and thought and communication and convincing people that what you're doing is for a purpose.
Yeah.
You're really a black sheep, you don't blend in with the crowd at all. And you just have to trust yourself that the dieting is for a reason and it's going to pay off. So that's why having a bodybuilding community was a savior, because I wasn't the weird one anymore who was dieting. But you just get used to it. Towards the end of the preps, I remember just thinking food was fuel. You sort of stop craving certain things, and you just see it as fuel for your next training session. So yeah, I mean, the training was super hard, but just the social stigma around the dieting was a great challenge to overcome.
It's interesting to see the social side. I left the bodybuilding in my 20s after winning some international titles because it was
Yeah,
too
really.
selfish. It was very
Ah,
self-centered, and I was young, and like you just mentioned, the 20s, so same age range. But when I was in the squadron, I got very light. I got down to what I thought was 74, but the scales actually weighed wrong. Some
oh,
scales in an army
really?
gym, right? I got down to 74, and I thought, oh, I wonder if I can go under 70 and win a competition again. And long story short, I did, but I was eating in the camp. I was just running to and from work, and it was just a much more well-rounded aspect of it. And maybe I was more mature, as 15 years later. But
Mm,
in the young days, it is very selfish sort of sport. But I like people learning from our mistakes and our successes to then do it better. And where I'm going with that is, I know a few female physique athletes, and you can call them bodybuilders. They've actually healed their eating disorders by going into the sport, um,
yeah,
which
interesting.
is beautiful. It's got them a better relationship with food because they've got now control over it. Bodybuilding does give you
Mm.
control and choice over things, and it's great to hear that result of them getting a great relationship with food and healing that eating disorder with a positive side of the sport.
That is nice to hear. Yeah, it's definitely not, unfortunately, not everyone has great results like that. For some,
Mm,
it can exacerbate any problems that you have, but it is very nice to hear that yeah, you do have a sense of control. And I think that's why a lot of people do like the sport, because you are literally in control of everything.
yeah.
But the devil's in the dose. Like, how much can we control in our life? We don't want to get too, yeah. But for some people, it's brilliant. There's a lot of positives, but then I am noticing in this day and age, a lot more people are doing comps when they probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because look, I can come on this podcast and say, yes, competing's great, everything's great. But the takeaways are, the reality is it's very hard, and not everyone should compete, just like not everyone should play basketball or be a swimmer or, anything like that. So just because you go to the gym, it doesn't mean the next stage has to be a bodybuilding show. You can go to
No,
the gym for various reasons. But
very
for
well
those
said.
who, yeah, for those who love it, great. If you do have a good foundation of a relationship with food and training, do it. If you are a little bit rocky with your training and self-love and everything, then it's going to put a big magnifying glass on it, I think.
I agree, and that's where I wanted to just to jump off on. So thank you for the segue. I just found out last week that 18 to 24-year-old age range, body dysmorphia is now more prevalent in males than females,
Oh, really?
which is crazy. It's crazy that it's in females for a
Mm.
start. But see, but the fact that males have surpassed that is mind-blowing. So
Yeah, wow.
relationship with body. Interviewing Astrid last week, I interviewed her. Her prep was 40 weeks. She came off a
Okay,
10-year fixed eating disorder, became a dietitian, and wanted to do this contest prep to show that you could do it correctly. And she
good.
did. And her relationship with food did wobble, but her relationship with the body never did. And I've trained females again back in the day, and I often say now, doing a bodybuilding competition will just break a female's soul, her relationship with the body, because
Yep.
they're in that bikini, like you said, wearing next to nothing, looking amazing, but they don't look like that on day two, day three, and so
Hmm.
on. So relationship with body, would you, it's an open-ended question. How did that go going into competition then afterwards? As you said, 2019, it's been, 4 or 5 years. How's that affected your relationship with your body competing?
Oh, it's interesting. And we all have our unique experience, as you said, male or female. But wow, it's wild. I mean, I was so lucky to have beautiful guidance. The whole time I was coached by Hattie Boydell and her team back then. And they just gave me the absolute best guidance that I needed. So very
Right.
grateful to not feel alone during it. I didn't get as much advice from dad, because his method was a little bit more old school chicken and rice type things, which worked for him. But I was doing
Mine was fish
flexible
and rice.
dieting,
That was it.
fish and rice. Yeah, there you go. Keep it simple, but it works. But I was doing flexible dieting, so
Right.
macro counting. With that, yeah, I started relatively lean because I was a tennis player for 15 years, and that is a lot of cardio.
Oh, wow.
So I was a certain amount. I didn't have much muscle when
Hmm.
I started my first sort of diet for the show, and then was way too lean and way too small in my first few shows. So that was interesting because I didn't really have too much weight to lose. And then I went lower. And then the feedback was, you need to put on more size.
Yeah.
No one, not no one, but it's very hard to hear that as a female.
Yes,
Okay, I need to
absolutely.
put on
Absolutely.
size now, which means a break from dieting, the training stays, eating more food. And it takes a lot of discipline and work mentally to know that you are putting on a certain amount of size for a goal. I think that the common anchor is just having that goal. I couldn't
Mm,
imagine kind of going through it without an end point or something at the finish line for you to look forward to. Um, Personally, I mean, I didn't struggle overly. I'm not going to pretend that I had a really sad or bad story, but of
yeah.
course, you naturally compare yourself to where you were. You never, even when you're prime, shredded, looking your best, you never feel like you're lean enough, which
It's
is
true.
absolutely wild.
Yep.
Because then you look back and go, oh my God, I was so lean, but you just can't really see it in yourself. And then coming out of it, again, I had that guidance. I think a lot of people just make the mistake, they get a coach or don't even have a coach for the dieting part. But then as soon as the show's done, they leave their coach. But after the show's in the building phase, I think that's the most important time to have guidance, because you can easily lose hold of the reins and just go too far, because your body is craving the nutrients, it's craving more food. You know, you might feel a bit more tired, so you won't train as much, and that's where you can really do some damage physically and mentally.
Yeah.
But to answer your story, yeah, I would never want to, right now, fast forward 5 years, I'd never want to go back to being that lean. It's just too much work, and it will deviate a lot from my relationships now, business now, but even just from a body image sense, I've learned just to be proud of where I'm at, because a body's just one representation of where we are at a snapshot in time. And I know that if I did want to make changes, I know how to do that. So
Right. So
yeah, I don't know.
you gained that control as well.
Yeah, it is a control thing, definitely.
Yeah.
And just now I just give myself permission. I mean, I don't count macros anymore, which when I was in the thick of bodybuilding, I remember thinking, wow, I'm going to be counting macros forever. I can't imagine a life without counting macros. And then just slowly the priorities change, and you can't really unlearn what you've learned in a sense. So you learn how to eyeball food, you learn how to listen to hunger cues, and it was just, and now it's really nice to not be so rigid with everything with food, because yeah, it takes a lot of work, as you know.
Back to grandma's cooking.
Oh, of course, the best.
I love that you touched on flexible dieting. I was lucky enough to interview Professor Bill Campbell, PhD, and and all he does is study female physiques in his lab.
Amazing.
Lucky
Wow, what a
job.
job.
Yeah, I thought the same thing when I said it when it came out of my
Yeah.
mouth. And he's proven in his whole lab and his cohorts proven that flexible dieting is the most successful way to go for any weight loss goal. So really good that that was successful for you. I just want to touch on something you said there. I wrote a note down there, the pill. Again, glossing over things, which we do in these shows. It's my job to bring that up for the listener and the
No,
viewer.
thank you. I do fly through a lot of topics, so thank you for anchoring me and coming back to it.
Yeah, very normal. The pill, I'm not a female, but I'm aware of other things out there. You said there's other options. I do know that, oh gosh, I was going to use some really crude words there.
Go
It's
on.
insane to give a 13-year-old male testosterone injections. If you did that, you'd
Mm,
be put in jail, but doctors will give a 13-year-old female the pill, which is estrogen.
yep.
That's just as insane to me. So please take that on board, listeners. But what are the options you spoke about there regarding uh, the pill and everything surrounding that? Birth control.
Look, honestly, well, the reason why I went on the pill was for my skin as a teenager, which now that I'm older, I know I probably could have just cut out dairy and a little bit more gluten. And then that would have had better effects on the skin.
Hang on.
But
So hang on.
yeah,
You've
sorry to
said that.
deviate.
You've said that. No, it's not. We'll just pause that and push that out. You said that online. You see that very often, but relatively unsupported. Again, the pill was invented for birth control. You don't get pregnant. It wasn't invented for your skin,
Yeah,
Dani. So
exactly.
a doctor's going to give you the pill for your skin. That's beautiful that you've said that with, hey, I can just change my nutrition and my skin gets better rather than going on a horrible hormone.
Yes, but I was so desperate back then. I tried the Proactive and all the crap that was
Mm.
on TV. And a young kid, you just don't really know. You listen to a doctor and you say, okay. And then I thought, oh, I can skip my period with the sugar pills. This is fantastic. So what do you think I did every summer? Just skip my period. It was, if I have a daughter, I'm gonna just say, yeah, you've got a lot to learn. Don't do what
Yes.
I did.
Yes.
Look, there's the Marina, the Implanon. Look, none are ideal. None are ideal. It is context dependent. I do understand that not
Yes.
everyone is in a position to not be on contraception. Some people have certain lifestyles where they need that protection. So I'm not here to say you have to be off it
Mm.
completely,
You
but
just said there's options.
yeah, try and find an option that isn't so heavy in the estrogen and progesterone as well. So I think it's just best to talk to a specialist. It doesn't necessarily have to be a GP, but a gynecologist or someone, yeah, in naturopathy, who can know your body and what you need, and then find something that won't cause havoc in your body. Because yeah, I tried so many different pills under the sun, and then some of them stop working for a bit, so you have to get a stronger dosage.
Yeah.
And then that's why, as well as the competing, I think it took 18 months for my period to come back. I thought it was never going to come back, but it's always hindsight that you learn these things. So yeah, I don't want to give my best recommendations to people just because it's so specific for that individual, but there are some other options.
Your answer was great. You gave enough information there that people can start to have a path, a direction there. You gave good direction with your answer. So thank you.
That's okay.
Um, Going on to a couple of things there, empowerment and strength. Your videos are you lifting weights. You're an osteopath lifting weights, but it's really empowering what I see there. And when I was at the gym at 16 years old, it was a pit in New Zealand, and there was one exercise bike in the corner and one female in the gym, and she was
Yeah.
an Olympic lifter. She was about 50
Oh,
kilo, 50 kilos, lightweight champion, but
wow.
one female, and then the girls doing the Les Mills uh,
Yes.
body attack.
Yes.
But now they're lifting weights, and it's beautiful to see. So um, you're a female doing it. You're not Andrew Locke. You're not some huge physiotherapy expert that can also lift a hell of a lot of weights.
There's only
Uh,
one Andrew Locke.
so true, and people do go look at him. He's lots of fun. But you're empowering there with your strength work. What's your philosophy there? What's your intent?
The intent there is just to break the stereotypes. I started in working in women's gyms, and I have seen the transition from even working in Fernwood. I'm not sure if Fernwood is in New Zealand actually, but we definitely had Les Mills, Fernwood
Yeah,
Fitness. That's where I started. And then I learned all of even what I grew up with. You think weightlifting is going to make you bulky, or gyms are intimidating, because some
very,
are quite intimidating. Even
very.
I walk into someone and go, oh my goodness, it's
I'd
wild
freak
in
out
here.
going into a Revo Fitness or any other crazy gym, and I've done this for 38 years.
Yeah, so you know what I mean. And it was just really cool to only work in women's gym for the first 5 years of my career, because I really got to know all kinds of mindsets that women had, but then be in an environment full of encouragement and, yeah, of course, weight training. Cardio will always be a part of people's training, but I think now as the years go on, we are well educated on the benefits of weight training throughout the female lifespan, whether you're a teenager, going into adulthood, perimenopause, postmenopause. There's a lot more research, but then also real life practical experience where women don't feel alone. As I said, when I started bodybuilding, I was the only person in my gym at Fernwood who was doing a bodybuilding show. And I mean, it was so different. But now you walk into a gym, so many people are training to compete, or, athletes high level, because women work really hard. Men
Oh
do
yeah.
too, but like even my partner, Paul, who's a physio, and he's pretty much the male version of me. He loves training his female athletes because they just push and they really give it their all. So it's nice to see that stereotypes are being broken, and that's what I really want to demonstrate. And of course it does come out of a love for training, but then also how can my clients and take my advice, and how can I be an example if I'm not doing the work myself? So yeah, I'm doing it for my own health, but then also to be a great example for my clients.
I love that. I love that. I'm a little bit of the older school. I most of the stuff I do with when I'm a parent, I'm doing it so I'm a good example for my boy. So I'm
Love
very
that.
conscious of the things I do, not just in lifting weights. We do our morning exercise that's
Ah,
out there in the backyard gym. But
yes.
you got to be an example. You got to be able to walk your talk, and that's the difference that yourself and Andrew and all the people I've mentioned, all of them, Astrid, Damien Taylor, even Bill Campbell, he's a professor, but he lifts. They're,
So good.
they all walk their talk. So it's great to see.
Yeah, it's fun and you get to experiment with new exercises and look, if a little niggle, I think that's an Australian word, but like a minor injury does pop up, you work through it on yourself too. And then you can resonate with your clients a little more as well. It's not
Mm,
like we're not training. Obviously, we don't want to be injured or get injured, but sometimes little things do pop up and then you use your own education and self-awareness to work through it. And then if the next time a client comes to you with something, you can be a little bit more empathetic on the mental impacts that an injury does have. So it's all part of your character building.
gosh, that's interesting you said that. I think without that, you can't do it very well. So what Danny said was the mental impact of injury. That's what you mentioned. Sorry, it's not what you said.
Mm.
I've been through so many injuries in my life, both musculoskeletal, but also some traumatic ones. And they have a mental impact. And if someone comes to you with a sacroiliac injury that's just a dark pain or a neck pain or whatever, if you can empathize, and empathy is a different thing than sympathy, and it's a different thing than having a bunch of intellectual knowledge. If you can empathize with that person, what it's like to have to roll out of bed or whatever you've got to do, that makes all the difference with the connection and rapport you have with your client or patient.
Yes, very well said. And that's very much why myself and the select few that you mentioned, we always allow our patient to walk out with some homework that involves movement because
Mm,
too many practitioners or GPs are telling people to stop altogether,
mm,
not to stop for a few days or a week, to stop heavy lifting. And it is so disheartening for the client to hear that because that's their social health. Their friends are at the gym, their mental health, they're present, they're working on themselves, and of
mm,
course, physical health, all being told to stop in one hit. No ifs, no buts, just stop. And that comes from the health professionals' lack of knowledge. They don't lift themselves. They didn't learn in their degrees because it's not really taught well in university. So
mm.
I'm trying to get my head around why people can just so freely give that poor advice because it happens so often, but it's still a cop out. There's no excuse. And that just drives us to better educate people. And there's always something you can do. Because if we, yes, stopping for a short amount of time, right, might change the, for example, if it's a workplace injury from repetitive lifting, have a little break.
Yeah.
Okay. But let's teach you how to lift correctly so you won't hurt yourself. Or it's okay to remove the trauma or whatever's causing the stress for the first week or so to let the
Mm.
body heal and recover. But we need to get right back into movement pattern training and strength and everything that was being neglected to get you into that position and dysfunction in the first place. So there's always something you can do. And then if you have received information saying you have to stop everything, get a second opinion and then a third opinion and fourth until you find someone who can actually help you continue to move. So important.
Again, that's for the listeners to listen to again. Find that person who can do the job. Um, I interviewed Chris Duffin. You may know,
Yeah.
heard of him. One of the five strongest men in the world, humans in the world, um, at the time in the deadlift, and then five strongest humans in the world at the squat. But he talks about, he's in the clinical space now. He talks about teaching the 65-year-old grandma to be able to lift her grandchild, who's going to weigh like 30, 40 kilos. Imagine if
Mm,
you saw a 65-year-old grandma in the gym deadlifting 40 kilos, you'd think, oh,
yeah.
that's really good. But that's her grandchild and how happy that made her. And that's
Yes.
function and that's health span and happiness span as well, I think.
And that's the motivation because you really need to tap into the emotional connection that your client has to movement. So maybe she doesn't want to lift 40 kilos in the gym, but if you
Mm,
say you can lift your grandchild, then of
mm,
course they're going to do it. It might prevent them from ending up in a nursing home. As soon as we lose the ability to get up or down, it's
off the ground.
extremely hard. Off the ground, off a chair.
Yep.
Off the ground's massive.
Mm,
Balance. There are so many reasons, even as a dad or a mum with your young kids running after them, there's so many emotional motivators, and it's important just to tap into that, because not everyone gets motivated by going to the gym and lifting metal. But we need to, liken it to their lifestyle. And that just comes back to what we were talking about earlier with the discussion and getting to know your client first and what drives them, what they do with their life, because they're an individual and everyone's really different. The outcome is movement, and that will always be helpful for everyone, but we all do it for different reasons.
Absolutely. Gosh, very synergistic there. I'd like to sort of finish up on your podcast. So again, you're very complimentary towards me, but you do a lot of things. You must have you must have more than 24 hours in a day. So well done.
Oh, it feels like it. It feels like there's never enough, but thank you.
A little bit of research. I had a quick listen to some of the shows and flick through the many titles. They were very interesting. Really seems to be centered around myth busting there in general as a genre, because a lot of people do the wrong things. So just talk to us about your podcast, what it is, what its intent is, and where people can find it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we have a great time doing the podcast. It's called Level Up with Sherelle and Dani. Obviously, I'm Dani, and then I do it with Sherelle Grant, who was a midwife, but now she runs the Women's Health Movement, which is her online coaching space for women,
Yep.
covering training, nutrition, mindset, all of the above. And we started that in 2019, just after our last bodybuilding show, and then have kept going right up until now. So we've hundreds of episodes now, but we've really changed from just winging it at the start and talking about our bodybuilding experience and all of that sort of young and naive and passion there. But now we've really taken it forward as we've grown, and we've been able to be consistent for so long because we do take the listeners on a ride of our development, and we share our mistakes, we have a laugh, we educate people, as you said, some myth busting. It's just been a really cool way to have listeners listen to us share our life, really. But then with health and fitness and all of that as the underlying topic,
Yep.
but then we're not scared to say where we've made mistakes or what we're struggling with, what's gone well. We celebrate each other. We help create a community where men and women who listen do feel like they're just having a laugh with us, and they're not alone in what they're going through in life. So no, I appreciate you allowing me to share about the podcast. We have a great time, and it's very character developing having podcasts. It's at the start, I remember being super, super nervous to do it, but then it's just such a powerful way to get a message across.
It is you. I'm a bit luckier than you are, or I've made my luck. I interview people. Interviewing people is a lot easier than two people getting on, even one person getting on and doing a solo cast. But it was interesting, your podcast. I've got so many that get thrown at me, and I found yours was attractive, and I thought
Thank
really
you.
important to speak. You're welcome. Really important to speak to that, and I loved what you're doing with it. What's it like to work with Andrew and the team at United Health Education? Because you guys are a little bit different. So what's it like to work there?
Yeah, so working with Andrew Locke and then his wife, Julie Locke,
Yep.
it has been such an incredible ride. Again, we started in 2019. That was just such a pivotal year. All of these opportunities came out of 2019, but I met him down at Pro Raw Gym in Melbourne. I was a newly graduated osteopath then. He was the big dude walking around the gym. Just I would look at him and go, this guy is awesome. And then finally I got to meet him and Julie, and I remember seeing him working with his patients as a physio, but not being hands-on.
Yes.
And I finally found someone that I could learn from and model from, because I was on my own endeavor of trying to teach people exercise to heal their injuries, but I didn't know who to look for advice. I was kind of just winging it and throwing my personal training knowledge with my osteopathy knowledge. But then seeing Andrew, meeting him at the gym, and then going to some of his seminars, that's when the final big puzzle piece came into place. And I just showed up. I made sure I was always, super friendly and smiling, inquisitive, and I just super respectful. I didn't want to take up too much time and all of that. I think I really earned the right to to work with him and Julie because I remember one day he needed someone to help film glute exercises, and Julie thought of me because, yeah, I just turned pro. I was in shape. I was happy. I was on top of the world. And I said, yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. And that day was like 40 degrees on that mezzanine in the gym. And I remember it was so hot. And I go, Dani, you are going to film all day if you need to, and you're not going to complain once. I just was on my best behavior and did all the work. We filmed for hours. Julie was wiping the sweat off his head in between each take, I remember. But I really just showed up and gave my A game. And I think they really sensed that passion, not to use that word, but over and over again, but it's so true. When you love what you do and you're willing to be a student and show respect, that's how you create really powerful bonds and relationships. And then I remember throwing the question out to Andrew and saying, well, when are you going to turn those glute exercises into a workshop? And then he goes, well, when do you want to do that with me? And
Oh,
I could have
wow.
fallen over. I go, oh my God, that's like a dream, a scary dream, because then all the thoughts come up. Oh, I'm about to present with Andrew Locke and all of that. And yeah, one thing just led to the next. And we started with our seminars and they were a hit. Julie was more behind the scenes back then, and she was just happy to help out and make sure we were okay.
Mm.
And we've done over 20 seminars now, and one in New Zealand as well, which was absolutely insane. Loved it. And then we built our online platform for United Health Education because there's so many people in the world that could help, that needs help. So we created a series of not only online workshops, but just little programs for people for certain injuries, headaches, shoulder pain, back pain,
Yes.
anything's on there. We've got our membership where we mentor other healthcare practitioners or personal trainers. So yeah, I think where we are, fast forward now to 2024, it's just been a lot of consistency and transparency and just aligning with one another. And then finally, in New Zealand, I gave Julie a big talk. I go, Julie, you're too knowledgeable to still be in the background. You've been a group fitness instructor for decades. You live with Andrew. You're married to Andrew. You've got the crash course mentorship, So now finally she's presented, and
Yep.
she loves talking about postmenopause and menopause and the older population. So I think just this year, it all finally came into fruition, and we've been able to, yeah, change a lot of lives, I'd say. But the main thing is we just have a blast doing it, and that's what's kept us going. We're also individual, and it's an interesting pair up, but we all just get along like a house on fire. So yeah, that's a long way of answering your question, but saying it's absolutely awesome. And it's a highlight of my life working with those guys.
It's a great way to answer the question, Dani. Synergy, I said the word a couple of times, and that seems to be what you've all created with United Health Education. You got your genre, you got Andrew's genre, and you got Julie's genre. And from a female being 6 different females throughout their lifetime, four different females through the menopause cycle, and then perimenopause and menopause. So that's the 6, if I've done my maths at all right. It's different. A lot of people don't know that as you don't produce estrogen, which is the main protector of against osteoporosis, main protector of bone density, that then abdominal body fat becomes a main estrogen producing organ. So you got to be really clever if you want to be lose weight or be in shape as you go through that different parts of your female life as well. So really
Yes.
interesting. Julie's bringing her knowledge education to that as well.
Yeah, oh, it's so good to see. And it all just comes down to, again, encouraging people to keep lifting heavy and moving well and prioritizing your health and well-being every day. So it's cool to be able to tap into all the different kinds of personalities that we resonate with. But I think we cover most bases with our uniqueness.
You really do. And the word that came to me through that whole time was renaissance. Dr. Mike Israetel the other day, a bodybuilding professor. I was lucky enough to interview another bodybuilding professor, Scott
Right.
Stevenson. These guys are the education, and girls, the education uh, and the practical side are brilliant. And he was critiquing Arnold Schwarzenegger's Pumping Iron movie.
Oh, geez, got to be brave to do that.
Classic movie, got to be brave, but it's 50 years old.
Yeah.
It's if I gave you a 50-year-old car compared to whatever it is you drive now, you know it's not going to work so good, right?
Exactly.
There's a renaissance going on. And, when I started my bodybuilding, it was at 17. So I've been lifting for 4 years. And that's 32 years of progress from when I first competition on fish and rice, 6 meals a day, and feeling terrible to
Mm.
now. There's a lot of education that's gone, a lot of study, and a lot of um, modernization. So that renaissance is coming on, and you are all showing it, and it's absolutely brilliant. So to have somebody like you on talking about your experience and how you're collaborating there is great to share with everybody else.
No, thank you so much. And I think my favorite thing about us collaborating and even Paul, again, my partner, we live and breathe training. And yes, we are educated because we've got degrees and things, but the real education, to be honest, comes from the practical experience. And we're not here to throw studies at people. And there's just something a little bit cringeworthy about the evidence-based practitioners who don't train at all.
Yeah,
I don't think it's good. It's so prevalent on the internet, a little bit more internationally, I'd say. However, there's too many people that are taking everything so literally that
mm,
it's actually causing, paralysis by analysis in a sense. Their clients and consumers of their social media are getting confused on what they need to do because everything is contradicting,
yeah,
and they're actually forgetting that the real evidence is working with real people.
yeah,
So we all actually train ourselves, we train real clients, and we don't need a study to tell us something works if visually we can see that it works. So that's our point of difference there. And I would love to see more of that because, A, you can't actually provide a study on every single scenario. A lot of them are biased.
yes.
Look, there is great research out there, but it's very rare to find. And yeah, aside from it being biased, it's very expensive. It costs millions of dollars. So why would we need to put out a study when evidently we know what works with our clients? Doesn't mean we're not always striving to learn more. And there's always scenarios in which we need to really rack our brains and say, "Oh, I haven't seen that one before." However, we get out there and we have that practical experience. It's not just about reciting confusing studies that don't even really make sense.
It's important to cut through that noise. You said paralysis by analysis, and I used that exact term last week with Chris Duff, and the best powerlifter in the world. He's a double world record holder, but he's also an engineer and clinically incredibly educated. We had this amazing show, and the guy can go on tangents because he's so educated and down these tiny little
Mm.
one percenters. And I asked him the question, okay, what's the lowest hanging fruit? What do you need to do to get in shape in the gym, be healthy? And he goes, sleep,
Mm,
nutrition, sun, movement. That was it. This highly
brilliant.
educated guy could deconstruct every little bit of those studies and probably add to them. But the first thing is nutrition. The first is sleep and nutrition. That's the basics. So it's super important to as a consumer, as a client, we do get paralysis by analysis. To have a coach like yourself, and that's probably the wrong term, but a mentor like yourself to help get you on track, I think is super helpful. And full disclosure, I'm going to be hiring you after this. I'm going to book with you and have a look at what you can do for me because I think everybody of any level still needs a coach.
Yeah, you're spot on. And thank you. Absolutely. Whatever I can help you with, I'm here for you. But yes, it's about that low hanging fruit. And people get so caught up in those little one percenters. It's
Mm,
great as an add on if you have nailed the foundations and you do want to just add those little one percenters. As you said, it's brilliant. But
yep,
I think people are skipping the foundation and going straight to those one percenters unnecessarily.
exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. So good point.
Look, well, I have narrated show notes right at the start, so we've gone through the show links verbally, and they're in the show notes as well. But we talked through a bunch of things. Where can people to go to find out you and then jump off into like the app, the United Health, into booking with you and so on? Where's the best place for people to find you, Danny?
Thank you. I think on my Instagram.
Mm,
So at Dani Antonellos. So hopefully you'll write my name in the show notes so I
of
don't have to
course.
spell it here. But yeah, then I have the links to all the other things that I do. And yes, it probably does sound like I do a lot of things. As you said earlier, there's more than 24 hours in a day, it seems like, for some people. But when they all interrelate, it's just, being able to help more people. And then, like you and I, we talk about what we love, so we can talk all day, every day. So yeah, find me on the Instagram, and then all of my other things are on there.
Perfect. And yours is one of the easiest ones to find. I always go into
Oh,
a
thank you.
person's profile at the start just to make sure I'm going the right direction. And yours is super easy laid out, which has got to be for people to go and find out more. So thank you. Dani, it's been beautiful to talk to you. Just a great chat and really enlightening for both myself and the listeners. Thank you for coming on. It's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I love what you're doing, and thank you for not only hosting this podcast, but then your amazing information that you're putting out there as well. It's really important to learn what you do.
Oh, that means a lot. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll hit pause. We have a quick chat and we'll crack on.
Thanks, Damien.
Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator and former Australian police officer, and your podcast host. Please check out my new project at hownottoDieGuy.com, where I teach everything you need to know to both males and females, at-risk populations, schools, kids, and the elderly for self-defense, situation awareness, and all-round skills that every good person should know. Thanks for watching.